Hello YouTube. Today we are going to explain the reproduction in plants. It will be a very long lesson if I explain everything, so I'm going to split it in half in two parts. This is the first one. So we are going to speak about types of reproduction and the asexual and part of the sexual reproduction in plants. So let's start. Asexual reproduction. Well, plants have two types of reproduction, asexual and sexual reproduction. So what's asexual reproduction? Let's choose the marker. So asexual reproduction involves a single progenitor. It's like one individual can produce two daughters, cell daughters. For this reason, new individuals are genetically identical to the first one. Here you have some picture showing the asexual reproduction. So this is the single progenitor, the just one cell that can produce two. It can split in half like this, and it will be separated into two daughter cells, células hijas. This will be the parent cell or célula madre. So because these individuals comes from this single progenitor, they are genetically identical. That means that they have the same characteristics, the same structure, everything. They are like clones. They are like twins, identical twins, copies of the original one. Right? So these daughter cells can produce other cells, but all of them are identical. Sometimes you can find some different individual, but that is because of a mutation. But without that, all these cells are the same, identical. That's very good. That's a good strategy because one individual can give a lot of new cells or new individuals, new organisms. And this type of reproduction is very fast and simple. So one bacteria, imagine one bacteria that enter into a body and it can reproduce itself very easily and very fast and produce an infection. Okay, this will be the example of a bacterial infection. So it's very successful and very useful for this type of organisms. Sexual reproduction involves two reproductive organs. As you can notice, I'm not talking about two reproductive organisms, because sometimes, and in plants this is very common, the same individual, the same organism has two different reproductive organs. They are called hermaphrodites. I don't remember if it's with pH. I don't remember the spelling, but you get the idea. Okay? But they can be two different individuals, two different organisms, or one organism with two reproductive organs. One, it will be the male, and the other one, the female. So each organ produce a type of special cell called sex cell or gamete. The descendants have similar characteristics to both progenitors, but they are not identical. That's very important. So it's the basic difference between asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction. Asexual only needs a single progenitor and all the individuals are identical. Sexual reproduction needs two reproductive organs, produce special cells, and the individuals are not identical. They share some characteristics, some genetic information, and they are similar but not identical. That's the idea. So as you can imagine, this is one male, let's say this is the male organism, this is the female organism. They produce sex cells that when they join together, it's called fertilization, and it produces different organisms. That's what I want to represent with different colors. They are similar to the parents. The children, let's say children, they are similar between them, but they are not identical. Okay, there are some differences. Imagine in your parents, brothers and sisters. You share some characteristics. We looks like our parents, but we are not identical to them. Also, one organism can join with another to produce new organisms, and this organism is going to have some genetic information from this parent and other different information from this one. And the combination is different from both, similar but different at the same time. That's why I use this multicolor signal to put the sexual reproduction. At the asexual reproduction, all of them have the same color. That's the main idea. Okay, so reproduction in plants. The first one, asexual reproduction. Most plants have asexual reproduction, which is called vegetative propagation. This sounds very strange, but I think all of us have the experience with this asexual reproduction. We know it already. I mean, have you seen sometimes a plant? Okay, this is our plant. Then let's put some branches. We can cut a branch and put it in a pot, this branch, okay? And after a period of time, this tiny branch starts to develop new branches, roots, leaves, and you get a completely new plant from this branch. So this is called in gardening cuttings. But also in nature, without cutting, plants can reproduce by buds, a word that you already know. Okay, this is called vegetative propagation. New individuals are created from a part of another plant. Right? So in nature also, apart from buds, you can find 4 types of vegetative reproduction that is based on some special or modified stems. These 4 variations or these 4 types of vegetative reproduction based on stems, on modified stems, are tubers, bulbs, rhizomes, and stolons. You have these images in page 146. As you can see, stolons are stems that grow parallel to the ground. The example is strawberry, is the main example. And so strawberries can grow these stems on the surface of the soil. And when this stem find a good location because of its humidity or temperature, the amount of light, if the conditions are right, this stem can produce roots and leaves, and you get another plant. Okay, this is reproduction by stolons, which are these stems growing parallel to the ground. The next one is tubers. Tubers are underground modified stems that store nutrients, and the main example is the potato plant. Potatoes are modified stems that grows underground, and they store or they can keep some nutrients. It's like a reservoir for nutrients, and that's why we use it as food, because they have a lot of nutrients, basically carbohydrates, that the plant can storage in these stems. Probably in your kitchen, if you leave a potato for a long period of time, you can see that this potato starts to grow some buds. Okay, like tiny plants on the potato. So if you put this potato into the soil after a long period of time, you can see that this potato can produce a new whole plant. Right? So the next one are bulbs. Bulbs are underground stems that they can store nutrients similar to tubers, but the most recognizable characteristic are their leaves or layers. And the example are onions or garlic. Onions, if you go to the kitchen, you can see that onions are made by a lot of layers. Right? So these are the roots and these are the leaves. If you storage an onion for a long period of time, also you can see that it can produce some leaves. And if you put it into the underground, into the soil, you can see after a while that these leaves are or became very big, very large, and also it can produce a kind of flower. It's not very beautiful, but it's a flower, and produce seeds. Produce seeds that you can use to plant a new onion. Right, so this is a way of reproduction, a sexual reproduction, the bulbs. And the last one are rhizomes. Rhizomes are underground stems that are able to form new plants. So it's very similar to stolons, but in this case, it's not an superficial stem, it's an underground stem. When it finds a good location, it can develop roots and leaves, and you have another plant. There are a lot of types of plants with this kind of asexual reproduction. For example, grasses, weeds, and trees like oaks. Good. So now in page 147, we are going to see the reproduction, the sexual reproduction in non-flowering plants. And in next lesson, we will see the sexual reproduction in flowering plants. So as you remember, non-flowering plants are, we can distinguish two groups: mosses and liverworts, and also ferns. So these plants, non-flowering plants, usually have a cycle of life with two different stages or steps. In your book, you can read that when male and female gametes join together, this process is called fertilization. And you can get a new individual, right? This is sexual reproduction. Two gametes join together, produce the fertilization, and a new individual is produced, right? This individual, in this case, are the mosses. The mosses are like these plants. Very tiny plants that cover the surfaces, the soil, like a carpet. Okay, this part of the plant is called gametophyte. And this sexual reproduction take place here, right? After the fertilization, like a new tiny plant is produced, which is called the sporophyte. The sporophyte has, at the end of this kind of stem, a capsule. Inside the capsule, the spores are produced, right? And when it's time, these spores are released to the environment, and they are released and they can be spread by wind, for example, and when they reach a good area, they can produce a new tiny plant. Okay, which is called the gametophyte. So a new moss is going to be produced. And then the cycle starts again. These gametophyte have the sexual organs and produce the gametes. When they join together, the fertilization takes place, and then a new sporophyte, a new capsule is created, and it will produce spores and so on. So as you can see, it's a cycle, and these plants use spores, which is very characteristic of these non-flowering plants, right? So this is for mosses. And reproduction of ferns is quite similar. In ferns, the spores are produced in a structure which is called sorum. Sorum, or the plural, sorry. Inside the sorum, which are these structure like balls, we've seen it already. In the underside of the fern, of the leaf, you can find some tiny balls, which are the sori. Inside this sori, the spores are produced, and when it's time, these spores are spread by the wind and find usually a very dark and humid place, and they can develop a new plant. This plant is called the Gametophyte, and it's a very small plant that it has the sexual organs. These gametes join together, produce the fertilization, and on top of this, so here you have one gamete, another gamete, they join together and they produce a new plant, which is called, in this case, the sporophyte. And the sporophyte, it will be the plant that we already know, with these big leaves, a fern with big leaves that will produce spores in their sorry. And the cycle starts again. Right? I think it's a little bit complicated. I hope you understand it. If you have any doubts, always you can ask me by email using the chat group of Moodle, or ask me anyway and I will try to explain it better. So hope you like it, enjoy it, you learn it a lot, and see you in the next video. Bye.